Okay, so I want to explore black and white thinking because I've been learning a lot about it, and the more I learn about it, I'm seeing it like everywhere and everything. It's really the all or nothing, the good or bad, the right or wrong, the this or that, and it voids the middle ground, the both, the gray. And what I've been learning a lot about black and white thinking is addiction and the model that is addiction. And what I've learned is that addiction, or the model that is addiction, is more or less bullshit, actually. And the thing that's fascinating about this is the way that I'm going to focus on this is very simple. Whatever it is that a person does, looking at why they're doing what they're doing is the most important thing, I would argue. So, like, you can argue all you want. A person is either an addict or they're not an addict. But that's all or nothing black and white, or black or white binary thinking, right? 1-0, this or that. A person is either this or a person is that. There's no middle ground. But we all do what we do for a reason, right? So you can look at people and suggest that they're an addict or that they're not an addict. However, whatever it is that they're doing for a reason. So it's actually, from what I'm learning, far less productive to be like, that person is an addict. That person is not an addict. It's not productive because it's all labels and superficial level shit. Instead, looking at why somebody is doing what they're doing, like, say for instance, if somebody does something quite often, right? You notice a behavioral pattern of somebody mindlessly scrolling on social media. I'll use myself as an example for this because I have, in the past, developed a pattern of mindlessly scrolling on social media. Whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram. Actually, Twitter is now X, but anyway, it doesn't matter what it is. Understanding why I was doing that is the key. That is what tells you everything. You could, people could go around, they could be like, oh, Chris is an addict. He can't get off of social media. He's got a behavioral pattern that continues to repeat itself over and over again of mindlessly scrolling. He can't get off social media. He's an addict. That doesn't tell you anything about me. It doesn't. Let's look at why I'm doing the action. Maybe I'm doing the action because I am trying to avoid something. Because maybe whatever it is that I'm trying to avoid is painful. So Chris is mindlessly scrolling on social media because he's trying to avoid something that's painful. What is he trying to avoid? Let's just make it simple, which I would argue to be simple in this case. He's trying to avoid his emotions. He's trying to distract himself from his emotions because his emotions are uncomfortable. His emotions are painful. The shame, the guilt, the fear, whatever it may be, it's painful. Okay, so now, instead of looking at it from the standpoint of this or that, he's an addict, he's not an addict, but in this case, people would say he's an addict. Again, that doesn't tell you anything. So let's remove that layer and look underneath it. What's underneath it is the consistent behavioral patterned theme of mindlessly scrolling. What's underneath that? Why is he doing that? Like, that's the thing, like, there are layers on top of layers on top of layers on top of layers on top of layers. And we just kind of like be like, oh, that person's an addict. That person is not an addict. all the while, like, not looking in every area of someone's life, you know? And I just think that this is so fascinating because as I've learned about black and white thinking, splitting, either this or that, I've been seeing it everywhere. Like, in so many different ways. You know? And it's wild because I suppose people could argue that it's very hard to think or live outside of black and white thinking. But there's this entire universe of potential for understanding self and other when you step outside of black and white thinking. All you have to do is ask either yourself or somebody else why an action is taking place. Why am I doing this? Why am I mindlessly scrolling on social media? Sit with it for a bit. What comes up? All right, there are emotions. There are difficult and uncomfortable emotions to face. I don't really know what to do with these emotions. I didn't really learn how to explore my emotions or understand them, or, maybe in the case of somebody who, I don't know, if it were the case that it was me and I didn't know how to regulate my emotions, maybe I'd be scared of facing my emotions, right? So, like, we look at that, and it's like, okay, well, now there is a fucking pathway to information, right? When you just suggest that somebody is this or that, somebody's an addict or they're not, it doesn't do anything. It's just black and white thinking. And the more I look at this, the more I think for myself. I'm not considering this to be right or wrong, good or bad, fact or fiction. I'm just looking at it for what it is, and I'm thinking, it makes sense that if the model that is addiction, which is black and white thinking because you're either an addict or you're not an addict, it's bullshit. It's very shallow. Think about it this way. What people are or what people do in life, right? It consists of many layers. Consider this label of a person being an addict as like the icing on the cake. But there's a layer underneath that. And if you pull that back, you learn more about what's going on. So if you really want to get to the root, you have to. You got to understand that there are layers to all this stuff. And, well, I mean, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want. I'm not here to tell people what to do and what not to do, but I'm just exploring something that I think is absolutely fascinating because the more I learn about black and white thinking, the more I see just how underdeveloped a way of thinking it is. And to be able to find the gray, the balance of what's going on, right? And let's look at it this way too, by the way. Black and white thinking, consider a spectrum, right? Black and white thinking is like this or this. It's not this. So with that, with black and white thinking, there's no balance. This is why balance is so important. Say, for instance, somebody that considers themselves an addict, right? For them, it's either all or nothing. So either they're addicted to it, they're over here, or they're not even indulging, right? And then let's say, for instance, they relapse, right? And then they go right back to it, right? And it's just all. It's not nothing, because, they relapsed and this, that, and the other. So it's all, right? Well, why are they doing that? All. Why are they doing that? There's an answer for that. There's a reason as to why a person is doing what it is that they're doing that is to be considered addiction. However, it's not helpful to just say they're an addict. No, they're doing it for a reason. The reason as to why somebody is doing what it is that they're doing, especially if it's in the all thing, it's all. They tried nothing. They went right back to all. There's a reason for that. They're doing it for a reason. Maybe they're trying to avoid emotions. Maybe they're going through a really rough time and this is a coping mechanism that they learned, right? But when a sense of balance can be learned in that spectrum, right? In the middle of that spectrum, when there's that middle gray ground of balance, right? Where, I can indulge every now and then. Doesn't have to be all the time. Doesn't have to be never. It can be every now and then. It's wild because then it actually tells you why people are doing what they're doing. I don't think that it's productive to just consider that somebody is an addict. They're either all in on the addiction or they're not. There's a reason why they haven't found that balance. Maybe they have a challenging time with their emotions. Maybe they learned coping mechanisms of avoidance and, whatever it is. I'm gonna mindlessly scroll on social media to avoid these uncomfortable emotions. I learned that from, I'm not saying myself personally, but, speaking as the person that's going through that, I learned that coping mechanism from my parents, right? If the parents were to have taught them to, sit with their emotions and regulate, they would be experiencing life completely differently. It's just wild to me. It's fascinating how there's always so much more to every picture, but it's just so easy to be like, oh, that person's an addict. Oh, that person's not an addict. I look at the people also who don't ever do the things. That's the all or nothing thing, right? It's like, well, you could find a balance. And I'm not here to tell people what to do. Again, I'm not at all. But you could find a balance, Black and white thinking and the capacity to step outside of that and ask why. Just ask why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I do what I do? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you do what you do? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you do what you do? Just need to ask why. That's it. It's wild. It's so fascinating.